What's going on, everybody? You're listening to the Point2Point NHL Recap Show. I'm Pascal Pryor, joined by Mark Havilat. Mark, before we get into things for today, man, how you doing?
Not too bad, buddy. We obviously talked about the Habs a lot last week. They've been kind of continuing their strong play, beating Washington last week, falling just short to Dallas as well. So honestly, pretty excited to be a Habs fan right now. I'm seeing the optimism about, I don't know, I don't think we're making the playoffs, but I mean, I'm down for the ride to see if we can do it, to be honest, at this point. So kind of pumped in the hockey standpoint, man. How you doing? Flames are
I'm
looking pretty
doing,
good too.
yeah, I'm doing good. The Flames are looking good. Honestly, man, like if you're a fan of any NHL team right now, except for the handful at the bottom, you're really feeling good right now because most of these teams are in the playoff on here as we're approaching trade deadline, right? Like there's very few teams right now that are fully out of it. So me being a Flames fan, I'm still a little optimistic on how the season's going. I'm liking what I'm seeing. It's gonna be interesting to see what they do if they're gonna be sellers or buyers come trade deadline because of course they're sort of stuck in the middle ground right now. But yeah, this Montreal team, man, as you said, we've been talking a bit too, like off the podcast, and man, they're a fun team to watch, dude. Like that Vancouver game last week. Normally Montreal Vancouver on a Monday, Tuesday night, whatever it was, like I don't really care about that, but last week I'm like, man, I gotta watch this game. Like
Dude,
this is a
even
must see
Dallas
game.
Montreal on Saturday kind of
Yeah.
became almost like a must watch game, and it was a good game going to a shootout too. But I mean, we got to spread some love around to some other teams here as well. I think we're going to get in and talk about the Eastern Conference at least first, and how tight this wild card race is. Like, what are your thoughts about this? I guess is my question right now. Um, it seems like the top three in the Metro are kind of set, regardless of like what the final positioning is with Carolina, New Jersey, Washington. And then you get over to the Atlantic, dude, and it's like third place is Tampa. They got 49 points. And then Boston's wild card one, they got 47. Columbus, 46. They're in wild card two. So those are the teams that are kind of in the playoffs. But then underneath that, you've got Ottawa's got 45. Detroit, Montreal, Pittsburgh got 44. The Rangers got 42. The Islanders and the Flyers got 41. And then Buffalo's kind of sitting there with 37. My question
Dude,
to you
it's
is, do you see these? It's kind of hard to predict now. Can you see Columbus staying in that wild card two down the road and being in the playoffs, and Boston? Because Boston has been really struggling recently.
Boston's an interesting it's super interesting, man, with how close it is. Like I don't remember a year really in past years where it's been this close this late in the season. Like we're not that late in the season, but we're at the halfway mark right now, right? And like
Yeah,
I don't remember in seasons past being at the halfway mark in a season and having only one team in the Eastern Conference truly out of it, right? Because right now the only team that's truly out of it really is Buffalo with 37 points. Like I think 10 points is a bit too much to make up, especially considering how many teams they'd have to jump to get into the playoffs, right? So I can safely say I think Buffalo's out of it. But Philly, who's second last in the Eastern Conference right now, they're 41 points, right? Like they get a hot week and like they're right in a playoff spot. So it's really hard right now to say who's going to be in, who's going to be out. I think in the Atlantic, you mentioned like Tampa's there. It's somewhat close between Tampa and Boston. I think Tampa's going to lock up third place in the Atlantic, right? Like
they've got some
they're
games in
two
hand.
they're 2 points ahead right now, but they do have 4 games in hand, right? So if you win two of those games, you start to make a bit of separation there. And as you mentioned, the way Boston's been playing, they have not looked too good. The one thing I am pretty optimistic for Boston though is like, can Jeremy Swayman turn things around here
He has
within the
been
next
playing
few
a little bit
weeks?
better recently too.
Because like with him, he got off to a slow start to the season, but it's understandable because he had those contract negotiations. He missed training camp, right? So for if you're a goalie and you miss training camp, you're playing catch up all season long, right? But
Yeah.
we're getting to the point in the season right now where it's like he is starting to be able to catch up. So it's I'm interested to see with him like in the next few weeks can he think turn things around? Because if he can, then I think Boston will be able to make the playoffs in a wild card spot. Honestly, man, I'm still convinced there's going to be 5 teams from the Atlantic going into the playoffs,
Really?
right? So
Okay.
I think Ottawa, Detroit, or Montreal are going to be that second team in the wild card spot. Truthfully, I think Columbus maybe falls off a little bit here. It's going to be interesting to see what they do at the trade deadline, right? Like, are they going to be buyers? Are they going to be sellers? because like I think it's safe to say going into the trade deadline, Ottawa is going to be a team that's a buyer, right? Maybe not a heavy buyer,
Yeah,
but they're
yeah,
definitely looking to add Detroit, right? Like there's rumors they're looking to add. Apparently they're trying to be in on Dylan Cousins, so they're going to be buyers. Montreal, I don't know 100% yet what they're going to be trade deadline, but same thing with Columbus, right? So like if Columbus doesn't add a lot of trade deadline and Ottawa and Detroit do, then I could easily see one of those teams jumping up into the second wild card spot because right now they're only a point 2 points behind and both have a game in hand. So it could it could switch like that, right? But what do
yeah.
you think? Like, do you think Columbus is going to hold on here, or
I feel like they've been a team that like really hasn't been discussed about how consistent they've been throughout the course of the season. I mean, obviously, what happened in the summer, the boys have probably rallied together, right, and kind of
yeah,
do this for Johnny. You know what I mean? But there are some players on their team, dude, that have been like having pretty impressive years. Like I honestly, I love Monahan. I know you do too from his time in Calgary. I didn't honestly think he could go there and be putting up a point per game halfway through the season. He's playing super well. This Marchenko dude, like he's fucking taken off this year. Like he was a really good player the last couple seasons, but he's kind of hitting another level this year. He's like
yeah,
on pace for 90 points or something. Like playing some really good hockey. They do have a I've been saying this for years, dude, and I think a lot of people just kind of disagreed, but like they do have like a young core that they have been drafting like for a couple of years now that people aren't really like remembering about, right? Like they get Marchenko in the second round. You get Chinnikov, you get Voronkov in the and not in the later rounds, more in like the mid rounds. But you draft David Urachek, and now like Denton Mateychuk's coming up, and he's making a big impact. So I don't know, man. Like Columbus to me is like they're kind of in the middle of the rebuild. I feel like they're a little bit farther along than people give them credit for. I honestly think that they might be like to I want to say in the playoffs next year, but I think their expectations are going to be like to make the playoffs next year, at least internally. The way they're playing this year, I don't really how you can disagree with that. They probably think they can make the playoffs this year, the way they've been playing, right?
yeah.
I necessarily don't think they're good enough. I don't like their goaltending much. There's been a lot of rumors around like Provorov's going to be a guy out the door. Like if they're in this position, do they do that? Like I don't really know, right? The thing was too is you got to remember last year. I don't remember if they were in the wild card or not, but Philly sold Sean Walker, and like they were in the playoffs like all year. They might have even been in the playoffs to the deadline, but they just felt like they should stick to their plan. You know what I mean? So will Columbus do the same thing and still ship out Provorov and give Mateychuk like those second pairing minutes? You know what I mean? So they're kind of in the same situation as Montreal. I like if you're a Jackets fan, like this is a really fun time to watch your team. You don't really have the expectation to make the playoffs, but I mean they're showing that they possibly could, right? And you're kind of a couple years away before the expectation every year is we got to get in. So I mean, I'd be really excited if I was a Columbus fan. But some of these other teams that are kind of on the outside looking in, I think like have a lot more pressure than like say a Montreal or a Columbus does, right? Like you look at the Islanders, like you look at the Rangers, like what team besides the Rangers, I feel like the Rangers would be the answer to this question. But like besides the Rangers, like who's the most surprising team of like where they're at kind of in this Eastern Conference? Like to me, I didn't really know if the Islanders would be this bad. To be honest with you, like I mean, I thought they would show a little bit progression with like Patty Waugh being the coach all year. Maybe that can change some things up. But I mean, it still seems like it's kind of a roster problem, dude, with like not being able to score goals and stuff like that.
It's for sure a roster problem with the Islanders. Like they can't score enough goals. When you look back to 2 seasons ago when they did have some success, like Ilya Sorokin carried that team that year, right? Like he had a historical season in net for them. So
Yeah.
basically, it's like unless he's having a historical season, then you can't really rely on them making the playoffs. And I don't think it's fair to be able to put that much pressure on one player on your team where it's like, man, like unless this guy has a Vesna caliber season, then we're not making the playoffs, right? Because it's like realistically, no matter how good of a goalie you are, like you're a goalie, you know this, you talk about this, like goalies year to year are so inconsistent at times, right? Like even for the star goalies, man, like you'll have a star goalie where one year they have a down year, and it's like it's gonna happen to Sorokin, right? And it's like if it happens to him, is it really fair on the team like expectations to be like, well, like we're not making the playoffs this year because he's not having a Vesna year. The team needs more scoring. For me, though, when I look at the standings, the team I'm sort of most surprised about, honestly, is the Buffalo Sabres, man.
Did
Like,
you just you didn't have them in the playoffs, right? But
I did have them in the
you
playoffs, I
did.
believe.
So
I think I had,
did you just think like another year of this core would just kind of rejuvenate them a bit and like that they kind of learn from the losing and then potentially be able to get in? Was that kind of your mentality around it?
that's exactly what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be that they have so many young players on their teams that are on their team that's pretty promising, right? Like I thought it's like if you have like 4 or 5 of those players take a step, they'll be able to make the playoffs. But realistically, like has one of those guys really taken a leap in their development? I don't
No,
think
I
I
like I mean like
like
Dahlin's
maybe
getting better year over year. Tage, I think, is getting to
yeah,
the verge of being a superstar here. But yeah, you'd expect more from like Benson or a Jack Quinn. Paterka's been okay at times, but even like Dylan Cousins, he hasn't really taken that next step. I still see a lot of potential in him, but um, yeah, you'd think one of these guys would have kind of taken that step and solidified themselves as like a top six forward. But they're not really doing that, and I feel like they signed Zucker in the summer, and he's been kind of
yeah.
actually pretty good for them. I would try to lock him up if I was Buffalo if they could get like a pretty good deal done with him. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I wasn't that convinced with Buffalo because they do lack some veteran presence on their team, in my opinion, which I think is probably hurting them at times if they could have that voice in their room, kind of calming them down and that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what the next steps are for the Sabres team. Like I don't really think picking in the top 10 is really gonna fucking help, dude. Unless they
They
get a top
already
four pick.
yeah, and they already have prospects too in their pipeline, right? Like they have Polonius in their pipeline. He's going to be on
Dude,
that
they've
team
got
within the
Isaac
next.
Rosen, like Anton
Yeah,
Wahlberg, Noah Ostlund. Like they've got all these fucking guys they've drafted probably within the top 40 in the past 5 years in all these drafts. And it's like, how many, how many, how many spaces on your team are available for these guys, dude? Like you're not just
ex-
going to be filling out your team with first and second round draft picks. Like that's not how teams figure it out and kind of get over the hump here. But I mean, it is promising to have these players in the pipeline via for like trades and shit like that. But I mean, I don't really know what the next step is. Like, do you see them potentially, if they have a top 10 pick, moving it for someone at the draft, like a really good player if they could? Like, apparently there was an opportunity for them to get like, I just think they missed out. Like, they probably could have had Nick Ash for like a decent price, like that first round pick they had. I'd give that
yeah.
fucking in a heartbeat, dude. Probably even a couple other prospects I'd throw in there to get Nick Ash. Dude, they could have had fucking Patrick Laine. Like, I don't know, man. And even some of these like these younger players that are getting dealt recently, like the Tomasinos and shit like that. Like, I don't know why they just don't try to shake things up and go that route. You know what I mean? But it seems like they're very scared to make a move. But I don't know. Like, when are they gonna? My question is like, you can't. They say you can't deal from a position of weakness. Well, when will they be in the strength? Like,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like, is it going to be 3 years, 4 years from now? Like, you can't not do anything for that long, right? Like, I don't know.
And the thing with the Sabres too, why I think they're so hesitant to make a trade is because they've gotten bit in the ass at least twice now with trading high caliber players, right? Like Jack Eichel, they trade him. Guy goes on to win a Stanley Cup. He looks like he's a top 10 player in the league right now, right? Like
Yeah.
you trade Sam Reinhart. They did get a good return for that, but you're not seeing those those players even in your lineup yet, right? Like Levi, who is really the main piece of that trade, he's not in the lineup making a difference right now. He's playing down the AHL, right?
So
And
do you
what's Sam
see
Reinhart?
what my question is, do you see him as a piece they try to move to try and get
Levi?
better? Yeah.
No.
You think they try to keep him? They
I
play
think
Luukkonen so much that I just don't. I feel like I'm starting to not see a huge path for Levi down the road.
I think they keep Levi for now because the thing with Levi is honestly, I don't think I think his trade value's taken a little bit of a tumble here in the
Yeah,
last
that's
year
fair.
and a half or so. Like we talked about well, like when we talked about last year, the best goalie prospects around the NHL, it was like the five big names were sort of Levi, Wolf, Askarov. You had
Wallstead.
Wallstead, right? Where now I feel like Levi, like there's definitely a decent gap between sort of the Askarovs, the Wolves, the Wallsteads, and then
I don't
like
even know about Wallstead, man. He's kind of having a rough year too. He's been
yeah, he
injured. I
is.
I feel like Askarov and Wolf are kind of on that tier above now. I think
And
Wallstead maybe has taken a little bit of a step back as well, but
I'd say
I do
Levi's.
agree.
I think even Levi, like some people may even have him like in a little like in a third tier, right? Like
Yeah.
especially now with some of these other goalies that have been drafted. Like when we talk about Montreal having Jacob Fowler, right? Like I think if you were to ask me right now who I'd rather have in my system, I think I might start to lean with Jacob Fowler to be honest.
Yeah. The
So
thing when we're comparing that though is like if you probably look back at like their college days comparisons, like it's probably really similar right now.
yeah,
So I mean, it's going to be more or less how Fowler takes that leap to pro. I think in my opinion, but I mean, I'm always under the impression you can't really rush goalies. Levi kind of seemed to be rushed. So I mean, I don't know. We'll see next year once he hits like 23 years old, right? That'll be a huge difference there. But I don't
but
know.
yeah.
This Eastern, sorry, you go ahead.
Just before we move on from Buffalo, I think the next steps for them is really they really got to think what young players do they have in their future plans, what young players are not in their future plans, and then try to move off those young players for some better either some better players like right like JT Miller, Elias Patterson, one of those guys might be traded, right? It's like, are you willing to move off like a Dylan Cousins and another young prospect if you can bring in Elias Patterson? Like really sit down and think about that, like
Here's a hypothetical for you. Would you do this? Dylan Cousins and Bowen Byron for Elias Pettersson.
yep, right away I'm doing that.
For if you're both teams,
If I'm the Sabres, I'm doing that right away.
you think Vancouver would do that?
Vancouver, I think Vancouver would probably do that as well.
It's a very interesting hypothetical, dude, because Buffalo's getting the best player, but you're getting like a top six center and a top four defenseman, right?
Yeah.
Kind of, and they need a defenseman. You're replacing the centerman as well. Pedersen doesn't have that no trade clause right now. You could theoretically do it. Fuck, that'd be a shit situation for him, though.
But yeah, like if I was Buffalo, dude, I'd be looking at a bit more veteran players, players that have been in the league maybe for a couple seasons, right? And see what the market is out there. Like another guy we sort of talked about was Rasmus Anderson. It is a bit hard with him because he has some sort of no trade clause, right? So it's like you'd imagine Buffalo's probably on that list, but it's like if it's not, like he's a right hand shot, 27, 28 years old, right? Like he's a guy that would bring leadership into that locker room. So like, does Buffalo maybe look at a guy like that, whether it's now or in the off season, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm sort of I want Buffalo to take a look at those types of guys, like guys that have been in the league that are in the middle of their career that are are good players, right? Like because the big thing with them too is they have no veteran presence at all.
No, not at
So
all.
they need some leadership in that locker room. Let's move over to the Western Conference though and talk a little bit about them. There's a couple more teams in the West that are safe to say that they're out of it, right? Like Chicago, they're out of it. San Jose, they're out of it. Nashville with 33 points, they're kind of out of it. Apparently, the players though in Nashville, they still think that there is a chance for them to make the playoffs. So I want to start off by asking you this: like, is Nashville out of it, man? I see you shaking your
Yes.
head.
Yes, they're
Yeah,
out of it, dude. 15 fucking points, dude. Come on. Like I mean, if they're not out of it, then hypothetically you can't say Buffalo's out of it. Because Buffalo's doing fucking better than Nashville. And I know they're in different conferences, but I mean, they have less of a point gap to be able to get back to that wild card spot, right? Nashville's out of it, dude. Dude, they're fucking 13 and 22. Like, come on.
yeah, they're
I mean, they want to believe, right? And I get that, but they're gonna have to legitimately go on that run they had last year to get into the playoffs. That's what they would have to do. And I'm not even sure if mathematically that would even get them in if all these other teams are winning games and stuff like that. It is a bit of an interesting race, though. I feel like this one is more of a I don't want to say a more realistic race, but I mean it's more common of what we see. Kind of that bottom four teams are out of it. Like I'd kind of take Seattle like eh, they're basically out of it. I think at this point, Anaheim's kind of starting to get there, but I mean with Utah, St. Louis, Calgary on the outside looking in, they're only a couple points out.
yeah.
Like, what do you think about Calgary? 1 point out, 1 game in hand.
It's a hard one, man. Like, I think their team, like, honestly, the way the standings is right now, I think is those 8 teams that are getting into the playoffs.
Okay, so you don't
I
see
don't,
any change in this at all.
I don't think St. Louis stays in. Maybe Calgary could get in if they were lucky, but the thing with Calgary is like, dude, like, if I'm them, man, I'm doing anything I can to get my pick within the top 10. To be honest, dude,
Okay.
because it's like, though, like, if their pick, like, if they end up picking 11 and it goes to you guys for like Montreal, they're gonna be like, that's gonna fucking suck. Because that means your earliest first round pick is gonna be like New Jersey's or Florida's, right? And that's gonna be somewhere in the 20s,
Yeah.
maybe the 30s if one of those teams goes to the Cup Finals. Which, like, let's be honest, those two teams could go to the Cup Finals, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, if you're the Flames, man, I'm thinking you sort of got to sell. Like, yes, this team has played good and it is a good locker room, but you gotta commit to the rebuild here. You gotta commit to the rebuild. Get your pick within the top 10. Get that pick
But what
and
about if you stayed where you were? Like, and essentially, like, I'm looking at it right now in the entire NHL, you guys are 15th in the NHL.
yeah,
So basically, you're going to be the best team not to make the playoffs, which means we're only going to be giving you'll be giving us a 16th overall pick.
which still sucks though, dude.
You think so?
At 16, like, the difference between whoever you're gonna get at 16 and whoever you're gonna get at the end of the first round, I think is a decent bit. You know what I
Nah,
mean?
that's completely fair. Yeah, I think
Like
you're looking at more of a top six, top four defenseman compared to like a third liner or something.
Like, what did Cole Eiserman go last year, right? Like, Cole Eiserman went 15th, I
20th,
think.
20th,
He went 20th.
because the Habs got
Okay.
Hage at 21. It was right before.
Okay. But you know what I mean? Like, you can get like a Cole Eiserman, a Hage with like that area of picks where it's like when you're starting to get to like 25 to 32, which is where most likely New Jersey and Florida's picks are going to be, you're starting to it's starting to dip down a bit, I think, in the prospect quality. So, like, and for the
Yeah.
Flames, like, is it really worth it if they make the playoffs? Like, are they going to go on a run, man? Like, they're not like, when you look at the roster, that they can barely score, right? Like, I don't think they go on a run if they make the playoffs. So, like, is it really worth it to make the playoffs, lose your pick just to have 4 or 5 extra games in the playoffs? Like, I don't think that's worth it at all, right?
But do you see a difference in Montreal just because they're a little bit farther down the rebuild? Is that why you're almost like it's fine if they make the playoffs?
Oh, with Montreal, I'd prefer to make the playoffs because with Montreal, it's like, so like, you mentioned with Buffalo, right? Like, they have so many guys, they have so many young guys and so many prospects. It's like, where do these guys fit in, right? Like, with Montreal, you guys aren't at that point yet, but it's like, I don't think you guys need any more young prospects, right? Like, I think that you guys have really found your guys, and the guys that you've drafted in the system are it's enough, right? Like, those guys all
Right.
have positions where it's like, if you keep on going down the road of like getting lottery picks, like, you guys are gonna get to the point where it's gonna be like Buffalo, where it's like we have like fucking 20 guys under the age of 22. Like, where do these guys fit in, right? Like like Calgary right now, I think the only prospect they have that's somewhat of a caliber to one of Montreal's is maybe Zane Parekh.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you guys have Demidov, you have Hudson, um, like Caulfield's not a prospect, but you have Caulfield, you have Suzuki, right? It's like, for the Flames, the only player that is gonna be in that sort of like bracket of a player is Parekh, right? Like, maybe a Matt Coronado can really break out at some point
Yeah.
and turn out to be like that. But right, you know what I mean? It's like the Flames, I think, need to get a couple top end picks here to turn things around, or top end players, I guess. And the easiest way to do that is through the draft, right? So
Yeah.
I think
100%.
I think that's a road they should go down. For you though, how do you think like the playoffs in the West is gonna sort of break down here? Like, do you think these 8 teams are gonna be the 8 teams that make the playoffs?
I feel like you are right when you said that. Like, I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing another team in. Like, I had Utah making it. I don't really know if they're going to. It might be a little bit. A little bit much for them. It's a 5 point gap, right? There's a ton of time, but I mean to make that up is still going to take some time, right? I'm not really convinced that they're going to be able to do that this year. The Blues have been looking pretty good, but I mean I think that they kind of dug themselves a big enough hole at first that they're not really going to be rebound from that. I think you are right. The only one I guess I can see is really Calgary, dude. I
Yeah.
mean, I've been thinking all year, when are they going to really fall off and get out of this race? And they haven't at all, right? So I mean, they're kind of proving me wrong at this point. Wolf looks awesome, dude. If he continues to play the way he's playing, I mean, I think they might be there right at the end. And I know it's not really what you want to hear, but I mean, it is progress, right? Even from last season. But I mean,
Yeah.
you kind of just got to take it and deal with it, right? But I feel like it'll be these eight. But I mean, the only other team I could see, yeah, getting in is probably Calgary. Do you think that Colorado will end up being a wild card team? It's pretty
No.
tight.
No. I think I think they I think they're gonna jump over Minnesota. I think Minnesota ends up being the wild card team, to be honest, dude. Like they've sort of they haven't fallen off a ton, but I feel like they're starting to slow down a touch, right? Like
I wonder if it's just
Brock,
because they haven't had Kirill, really, right?
yeah, like Kirill's been out a bit, like Brock's a bit banged up right now, right? Like Brock Faber. So it's like I think with him, or sorry, I think with Minnesota, they maybe drop down here towards the end of the season. I still think they make the playoffs, but I think Colorado, like the way Nate Dogg and Rantanen are playing, dude, like even same with McCarr. They got Mackenzie Blackwood right now, right?
They
Like,
got fucking goaltending. What did I tell you, dude?
yeah, like the way Colorado's trending, I think they I think them and Dallas leap over Minnesota, and Minnesota ends up getting in the first wild card spot.
Man,
Um,
that's gonna be a heck of a first round again, eh? Like that Central Division. Like I heard Friedman talking about, like, if you're the Jets, dude, like you fucking play for first. Like you have to
oh
get
yeah,
first place. Like we're either talking about, like, these are the potential matchups we could have. We could have Minnesota Dallas, we could have Minnesota Colorado, we could have Dallas Colorado, we could have fucking Winnipeg Colorado again. We could have Winnipeg Dallas. Like, dude, it's almost like these matchups almost seem like something you'd want in the conference finals almost.
yeah.
Like it's fucking crazy the first round we're gonna get again.
See, I love it though because it really feels like it's like man, like there's multiple teams that can win a Stanley Cup, right? Like
Yeah.
they're like coming out of the West, dude. Like I really think going into the playoffs, man, coming out of the West, like any one of those teams could win in the West. Like even LA, dude. Like LA is like pretty good at points this year, right? It's like even LA, like if they came out of the West, yeah, maybe I'd be a bit surprised, but would I be like absolutely shocked to see them come out of the West? Like not I wouldn't be overly shocked, right? And I love that, man, because like the worst thing about the playoffs is when you get when you get the top team in the playoffs playing the worst team in the playoffs, and like it's a sweep and it's not an interesting series, right? Because it's like, well, we just like there's one whole playoff series in the first round that was like a complete waste, right?
Yeah.
Like playoff hockey, man, is the best fucking. I think it's the best thing in sports. Yeah, maybe I'm biased, but it's the best thing in sports, man. And if you can have better matchups early on in the playoffs, I'm all for that. While we're sort of talking about the playoffs, though, and how we think things are going to pan out between now and the end of the season, basically, I was listening to 32 Thoughts the other day, and they were Elliot Friedman was saying on their podcast basically that he's all for expanded playoffs, right? And he wants to see the NHL go to expanded playoffs. Is this something you want to see or no?
Man, I was thinking about this. I was watching this TikTok last night about this guy with he said five, it was like a TikTok about like five new rules the NHL could implement to make the game a little bit better. And he said the I think it was the wild card teams. So I mean, almost like, basketball does 7, 10, 8, 9 to get in the playoffs.
Yeah,
Do a fucking one game wild card.
yeah,
I mean, dude, the hype around that and like the viewership, I think would be nuts. And I think with one game, it also isn't like, okay, well, this wild card team is really disadvantaged because they're tired because that team just had a break and now there's this. I think I'd be open to the one game thing, to be honest with you. The only time it's going to be really a huge question is like when there's a year where the ninth and 10th team are nowhere near the playoffs and then they get a
Yeah.
chance to make it. But when it's like I think it'd be perfect this year in the fucking Eastern Conference. Like all these teams are so close. Even last year, man, it was like Detroit almost got in, Pittsburgh was almost in, Washington slid into that spot in the last second. Like I don't know, a wild card game could have been some huge hype, dude. Like I don't know if I'd be open to like a series because I think that it puts a disadvantage on the wild card team having to play like a quote unquote like fifth round of the playoffs if they went all the way. But I mean, I think I would be open to a 1 game playoff between the top wild card team and like the 10th place team and then like the second wild card team and the team that's just out in both conferences have four one single game eliminations. I don't know. Do you agree or not really?
See, I'm completely opposite as you, man. Like I think the playoffs are fine exactly how they are right now. You
See,
have
I can't really disagree with you though. Like, I mean, like, I feel like if they just wanted to change it, I would be open to the wild card thing. But I mean, I don't know if I think it's just going to cause a whole lot of controversy.
see for me, this is the way I look at it, man. Like you have 32 teams in the league right now, right? 16 teams get into the playoffs. So half the teams get into the playoffs. It, it's it's a fair amount, right? Like it's one thing if you have like 8 teams getting to the playoffs and then you open up to like 10 to do that wild card thing, but right now you have half the teams in the league getting into the playoffs. It's a good amount. When you look at a league that has gone to this sort of expanded playoffs format, you mentioned the NBA one, the what they do with the wild card, right?
Yeah.
Honestly, man, I used to be a big NBA fan, right? I cannot watch the NBA anymore
Is
because
it because of that, or like because I've seen their viewership's gone down because it's like a lot of like 3 pointers and shit now? Is like, do you agree with that? Like, do you find like you're more bored?
it's a for sure that's definitely a part of it is that the game like the actual game itself, the gameplay itself isn't as fun anymore. It's dunks and 3 pointers, right? Like which isn't as fun to watch. But the other thing that the NBA is fucking terrible for, I play basketball fantasy too, right?
Yep.
I can't play basketball fantasy anymore because now that the NBA has this wild card or the wild card for like tournament, whatever they call it, since you have so many of these teams getting in, the load management is
Yes, that's
fucking
what I was thinking,
the
dude.
load management is insane, and you have so many of these regular season games that don't fucking matter because all these teams except for the teams that are like literally atrocious are getting in the playoffs, right? So it's like looking at the NHL standings right now, right? Like the Eastern Conference, it's way closer. So I'll sort of use that as my example. But it's like you have Ottawa, you have Detroit, you have Montreal, you have Pittsburgh, you have the Rangers, you have the Islanders, you have Philly. Like all these teams are so close right now. Every single one of their regular season games from now to the end of the season matters a shit ton, right?
Oh yeah.
But let's say the NHL changed it, and now it was like you had four wild four wild card teams playing, then it's like the regular season games aren't as meaningful for some of these teams, right? Like,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, I mean, if the wild card thing got implemented and it was like not a very tight race, and say it was even a huge race between like the eighth and ninth spot, it's like they might not be saying it, but in their heads, it's like, well, if we just finish ninth, like who gives a shit? Like we're gonna fucking play the eighth place team in a game anyway. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like it's like maybe there's 15 games left in the season, and there's a decent margin between some of the other teams that are out of the playoffs. It's like, well, fuck, dude, we can almost coast the rest of the year. We're gonna have to play in this wild card game anyway, probably if we can't catch like the number three team in our division. So I mean, yeah, I kind of I was kind of for it, but you kind of convinced me not to be for it. I think that the hype around like having a 1 game wild card though would be insane if they ever decided to do it. But I mean, it's probably better if they don't.
it would be interesting to see, man, like for sure. But for me, it's just like for so many years now, NHL fans bitch and complain that 82 games in the regular season is too many games and that at times it's boring and there's meaningless games being played. Where this season it really feels like every fucking game really matters, right?
Dude,
And
I'm
it's like
looking at the
when
standings every single night now.
dude, and it's like we're getting that, man. Why would you change? Why would you change to expanded playoffs where it's going to hurt the regular season and not make all these games as meaningful as they are right now, right? For me, I just look at that and I'm like, I sort of get turned off by that idea, right?
Well, the
Like,
good thing is that Gary agrees with you. He's not
I'm
really
happy.
for the expanded playoffs. I just wonder if they start to like talk about it once we hit like maybe 34, 36 teams and like there's less than half making the playoffs. Like I would still be for the 16 making it, but I mean, I think that that's when they will probably start being like, oh, maybe we should expand the playoffs a bit or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and when we have more teams in the league, I'd be fine with that, right? Because then it's like
Yeah.
you want to give these markets opportunities to get in the playoffs, and there still will be meaningful games
And
being
even
played
like
in the
the
regular
revenue they'd
season.
make off like one game too would be
Yeah.
pretty nice, right? So
Even the other thing I think that would be interesting to see the NHL maybe go towards within the next few years would be a similar thing to the way the PWHL does their draft lot, like where instead of doing a lottery, they have it where as soon as a team's mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, they get the playoff points, right, for winning games. Because then it's like even for the teams like Anaheim or Buffalo who are going to be eliminated from the playoffs and their games aren't super fun to watch, it's like, well, those games are going to be meaningful up until game 82 because they're still competing for something, right?
yeah, yeah.
So it's like even that adding that I think would be fun and add a little bit. Or
Like
as you
even
mentioned,
like almost like are you saying to get like the top pick in the
yeah. So
draft?
because the
See,
way
like
the
I think you'd have to do it off points percentage though, to be honest. But I mean, also at the same time, it's like fuck, that's also tough because like what if you have the team that's like just missed the playoffs and then like it's like points percentage based off when you're eliminated and they still win their last two games, like you know what I mean? Then they have
yeah
like a thousand points percentage, like that'd be kind of difficult. I feel like, but I mean, I also feel at the same time that it would be pretty cool to see like these games with these bottom teams like actually meaning something, you know?
yeah, it's like if you had a game between Anaheim and or not Anaheim because they're going to go like okay, San Jose Chicago, right? Like if they played each other, like that could be a really meaningful game because whoever wins that game could be the team that gets the first overall pick compared to the second overall pick, right? It's
Right.
like, and that could be like game 78 of the regular season or something. It's like, I don't know, seeing that stuff too would be interesting because then it even adds for those lower in the standings teams that in the regular season their games still matter. But who knows? Honestly, that may be a fair bit of a stretch to see with how many teams we have in the league compared to the PWHL where it's a lot less teams, right? So it's a bit
Yeah, yeah.
easier for them to do that and the mathematics behind it. But I don't know. I just think it'd be something that I would enjoy to see maybe in the NHL at some point. Now that we've talked a fair bit about sort of the overall landscape and where teams are at around the NHL, it's mid season, so we got to give our mid season award sort of predictions here. Let's start off with the Jack Adams Award, Mark. Who do you have winning the Jack Adams?
So do you want to do like the three nominations or do you just want to do like a straight out winner
No, let's do the three nominations with the winner.
with the winner? Okay.
Yeah,
Jack Adams. I mean, every year I feel like there's always a couple guys that I don't want to say get snubbed, but I mean, um, they probably deserve to win and they don't end up winning because there's someone that probably has done a little bit better of a job. My nominations for this, I'm going with Carberry in Washington. Um, I think I'm gonna go with Hines in Minnesota as well. And then my last pick, I feel like it's just because they're gonna end on a really high note. I know they're going through a little bit of a tough stretch, excuse me, but I'm gonna go with Sheldon Keefe in New Jersey. I think he's
okay.
done a pretty good job as well. Right now, because of how good that they're doing, I think that I'd be giving this award to Spencer Carberry. I think that what he did last year, he probably even deserved to be nominated last year, and even a chance to win, getting that team into the playoffs. No one thought that this team was going to be good this year. Maybe some people had them making the playoffs. There's not a fucking chance they had them playing this good.
I had him
They had a
also.
lot of turnover this year, bringing in some new guys. Mangiapane comes in, Taylor Radish to get Logan Thompson, Chicker, and this isn't a team that was like just gone to the playoffs, and it's like you're dealing with a similar roster building off of that. There's a lot of holes that I don't want to say needed to be filled, but like were filled basically, right? With different players. And I think that the boys love playing for Carberry. He's doing a great job. I would have no issue giving him this award right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going Spencer Carberry winning it. The second finalist I have is Arnett in Winnipeg, right? Like
Okay.
he's coming in. It's his first year as a head coach in the NHL. He's done tremendous things with Winnipeg, and they're at the top of the Central right now, right? So I sort of got to lean towards him. Um, the third one I have is Hines in Minnesota. Same similar thing with them, man. Like going into the season, this is a team you sort of had as a bubble team. Maybe they sneak in as a wild card team. Maybe they miss the playoffs and they're like end of the lottery, right? But they're looking like a lock for the playoffs right now. Like I don't think there's a scenario where they miss the playoffs. He's my third nomination. But I will say this. If the Montreal Canadiens make the playoffs, Martin St. Louis will be my third finalist instead of
That's what I was
Hines.
thinking too. But I'm more looking. I know it's the halfway point in all this, but I mean, looking at that like in a full landscape, I was kind of like, I don't see Montreal getting in, so I don't think he's going to get this award. But to be honest with you, I could say the same thing with Dean Evison in Columbus. If they end up getting in, I
Yeah,
wouldn't have an issue putting him as a finalist as well.
yeah. I think if Columbus or Montreal get in, one of those coaches is like the third finalist, and you take out.
Here's another one. I wouldn't necessarily have him as a finalist, but I'd say maybe top five. If Ottawa gets in, what about Travis Green? Like, I mean, you got to think like, I mean, has he done the greatest job this year compared to everyone else? I'd say no, but I mean, he's also if they actually get in, he's getting this team over the hump. They should have been in for a couple of years now. Like, it's an interesting name to think about, right? Like, I don't think a lot of people kind of
Yeah.
considered it, but I mean, I wouldn't have him winning either, but I mean, maybe some people will give him a vote, right? Like if they get in.
The only difference for me between him and then Columbus and Montreal is just for Ottawa, it's a few seasons now where we've been saying like, okay, this is the year they got to take the step and make the playoffs. This is the year they got to take that step and make the playoffs. Where like for Montreal and Columbus, we haven't really even gone to the point yet going into a season where it's like, okay, this is the year they got to step up and make the playoffs, right? It's more been for those two teams like, okay, are we going to be seeing them competing in meaningful games towards the end of the season, right? And they have been doing that so far. And if they do make the playoffs, I really like if Columbus or Montreal made the playoffs, we're gonna look at that as them exceeding expectations, right?
Yeah.
Where if Ottawa makes the playoffs, I feel like it's more them meeting the expectations.
You know what kind of surprised me last year before we move on to the next award is last year, remember, kind of the Montreal Columbus-ish team of last year was, I mean, well, you could say Washington, but who I'm thinking of is Philly, right?
Yeah,
Like they were kind of there right to the end. No one really expected them to get in. And then I know they fell off near the end of the year and they kind of were in it and they should have made it and then didn't. But if you go back and look at the final voting for the award, like Torts was nowhere near like even like a finalist. And I feel like that surprised me a lot. I don't know if it had to do with that whole Couturier thing, you know, and then it kind of changed the team around and stuff like that. But that's why I just wonder if like maybe St. Louis and like Everson will get more votes than he did last year. But dude, I don't even think Torts was like top seven, like which
yeah.
surprised me, man. Like they almost got in the fucking playoffs, dude. Like I don't know, but I guess we'll see. Maybe Philly is a bit better of a team last year than like we're talking that Columbus Montreal should have been this year. But I mean, like we're talking about, dude. There's multiple guys that could probably be nominated for this award, right? But I mean,
Oh yeah.
there's guys that are also like probably doing a better job than those guys as well. So I mean, we had some similar finalists there, and I could totally even see like Arneal or whatever his name is in Winnipeg being a finalist as well.
So next up we have the Jim Gregory Award, and that's for the GM of the year. Who do you have here?
This is a tough one, right? I mean, the thing is with this award is it gets voted on in the second round of the playoffs because I think a lot of it has to do with like playoff success and stuff like that. I know I'm kind of long-winded here, but I mean, if this award wasn't based off of like pure success, like I mean, would you consider like putting some teams that are like building themselves for the future to be better? Because I heard Friedman say like if you really think about it, how can you say that what Mike Greer has done in the past year has not been like one of the
Yeah.
better GM like jobs as a GM in the league, right? But he's not going to get nominated because San Jose's not good. And it's like, but if you're looking at setting themselves up for the future, it's like they get fucking Celebrini, they get Dickinson, they get Askarov, they have all these other prospects there, right? That he's setting themselves up for, right? But saying that, the three nominations I got right now, I think McClellan in Washington, because as long as with Carberry, you have to think that he made so many bold moves this summer, bringing in these players to fill these holes after everyone said Washington had this luck getting into the playoffs. They got swept. Well, fuck, dude, he's proven everyone wrong, and they actually have a good hockey team here. My second pick, I'm going Eric Tulsky in Carolina. I'm going with him, dude. The roster turnover they had from last year is insane.
Yeah, it
And I
is.
didn't think they were going to be nearly as good as they are right now. And yeah, they're in third in their division, but they're also basically in the best division in the league, besides maybe the Central. You know what I mean? So I feel in a lot of other divisions they'd be right there at the top. He's one of my nominations. My last one. This might take you off guard a little bit, but I feel like just the change in roster they had. I'm going with Kelly McCrimmon in Vegas.
Okay.
I think that I didn't really expect Vegas to be this good, to be honest with you. I think he made some bold moves this summer, bringing in Holtz, sending out Cotter, um, Olofsson. Like, I mean, it's not what I'm saying is like these aren't like the nicest, like flashiest moves, right? But when you're a team that pays your players a lot and you have to fill in holes with cheap young guys, I think that's what he's done really well. I honestly think that we're still looking at Vegas as a contender. And to be honest with you, going into this season, I didn't know if they were going to be a contender or not. When you lose Marcia, so you lose Chandler Stevenson. I mean, those are big holes that you're trying to fill, right? Like, I mean, you lose Logan Thompson as well. Like, you had a really good tandem, and now you're going to more of a starter backup type thing. And honestly, Samsonov's been decent as a backup this year. He hasn't really been too bad. So I'm going with Kelly McCrimmon in Vegas, to be honest with you. I think he's filled in some nice holes for this team, and they're looking pretty nice this year.
Okay, so
And sorry,
I'm
my winner. I didn't say my winner. I think my winner, to be honest with you, is going to be McCrimmon in Washington. I
okay.
just think what he's done, man. Like he didn't just make a like he changed like half his fucking team, right? And I know I had Carberry winning the Jack Adams, but I mean, like I just think both of them have just done such an incredible job.
So I'm similar to you. I got Tulsky in third, McCrimmon in Washington is second. And for my first, I'm going with Bill Guerin.
Sorry, you said McCrimmon in Washington. Do you mean McClellan?
But yeah, McClellan in
Okay,
Washington.
gotcha.
I'm going, and then for my winner, I'm going with Bill Guerin in
Okay.
Minnesota, dude. Like when you look at how well this team is played this year and sort of the way they're constructed, like he has done a phenomenal job, man. Like they have Kirill Kaprizov, right? You got Matt Boldy. Matt Boldy is on the verge of being a superstar in this league, dude. Their
No,
goaltending,
I agree. And to be honest with you, I wanted to mention when you said Minnesota earlier, dude. Like, how nice is Rossi looking?
Rossi's looking like he's going to be. He's a future second line center for this team forever.
Dude, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm seeing shades of like a lower tier first line center.
You think he could be?
Honestly, oh yeah,
I
he's
think
almost
he.
at a point per game right now, man. And
Yeah,
I think just what he went through with the whole back injury with COVID set him back a bit. People kind of lowered the expectations, but I see him being more of like a point. Like I think he will max out at like a point a game. Like I don't want to be
yeah,
sitting here saying like I think he's gonna be like a top 5 to 10 center in the league. I think that's a huge stretch, but I think like maybe a lower tier first line center.
and that's
That's my opinion.
still a great player, especially for where they got him at in the draft, right? But and then you look on defense, man. Like you have Faber, he's locked up now. They just made that trade for Juracek, right? Like Zeev Buyemi drafts in last year's draft. You talk about some prospects that they still have up in the pipeline that are going to come up, like that Noah Oslin guy, that Oslin kid he's a lighting up the AHL, man. Like I think we could see him in the NHL maybe towards the end of the season,
Okay,
getting an opportunity.
I think you have a valid point with Minnesota. My question, and I feel like why I didn't put them on here, like Bill Guerin, is I don't think he really changed a lot with the team. That's my argument. Okay, I just don't know if I can sit here and say that Bill Guerin did a better job than Bill Zito did this summer in Florida.
Okay.
Because the reason I say that is like I think he's constructed this roster nice, but I'm more going off of like what he's done within the past, like this season and a little bit, right? He didn't make a whole lot of moves this summer, like, and you can't, right? You're strapped with that $14 million cap hit. But I mean,
Yeah.
I guess that's a reason why I didn't have him on, and I'm not taking anything against what he did. Maybe do you also look at it as well, like they didn't make the playoffs last year. They make the playoffs basically every single year, and he also just didn't blow it up and like change shit. Like, are you considering that as well into this?
I'm considering that as well. I'm also really considering that the fact that they have 14 million in dead cap.
Okay. And
Like
look,
that
if he was
that as
nominated, I
well.
wouldn't have an issue. I just feel like I more went like, okay, these guys made a lot of changes to their team. They were bold, and like it's worked out so far. I guess that's
The
why I just kind of didn't put Minnesota there because I feel like there's a lot of teams that are even similar in the aspect. Like even like you could say Winnipeg, they didn't really change a whole
yeah.
lot. They look good. Same thing with even Dallas, right?
Well, the thing that's interesting though that you bring up Dallas is Jim Nill has won it the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So it's like, but it's like over the last 2 years, it's not like they've made drastic changes really, right? So
Yeah,
the other
that's why
thing is like
I don't love this award. Like I
I
don't
don't
like
know.
not
Yeah,
that I don't love it, it's just like I don't like the way that it's like voted on and shit. And I feel like it's just like I don't know, dude, like why can't Mike Greer like be in running for this award
yeah,
if he puts San Jose if we walked into the season and San Jose was like a dumpster fire, no prospects, all this, and then he comes in, gets a future starting goalie, all this shit, like how can you not say that he's didn't wasn't the GM of the year even though his team's not good, right? One other guy that I feel like I honestly would have at my number 4 spot that we haven't mentioned at all is Fitzgerald in New Jersey, dude. I think he's made some
yeah.
pretty fucking bold moves recently too. You trade away Ball to get Markstrom. You give up your first round pick after missing the playoffs. You go out. Paul Cotter is a decent move. You send out Holtz, which I mean we thought was a pretty bold move. I wanted to ask you about this. Kind of off topic for a second, but remember when Calgary traded Markstrom, you got Ball, and I showed you that tweet about how Conroy said that or they said that they thought Conroy valued Ball more than Holtz. I don't really think that's false, dude. Looking at it now, I
Yeah,
honestly think that they could seriously consider like Ball being a better player than Holtz. Because I'm going to be honest with you, dude, I'm not really that sold on Holtz anymore. I think that he's been put into a really good opportunity in Vegas and hasn't really ran with it. So I mean, I seriously look back and I think that Conroy that could be true.
yeah, I agree with that too. And I think too, like we got a first round pick as well, right, in that trade where it's like at the time, if we're getting Holtz coming back in that trade, I don't know if New Jersey's willing to give up a first as well, right?
Yeah, that's the thing too,
Maybe
right?
it's like either or,
But to be
right?
honest, I feel like getting Ball is probably a better choice for you guys. Like,
Yeah,
right? Like Holtz say he was underperforming. It's like, are you running into another guy that's like Peltier? Like, you know what I mean? But at least you got a guy on defense. He's ready to play right now. He's playing
yep.
second pairing minutes. I mean, he's looking pretty good. Like I'm more saying if Holtz and Ball were put on the trading block for each respective teams, I think that you'd be getting more for Ball at the moment.
Yeah, I think so too.
Sorry
I
to
think
go
that's
off
fair.
topic here, guys, but I mean, I just kind of wanted to bring that up to ask Pascal. What award are we on to next year?
We got the Calder up next. Now I'll kick things off for this one. In third, I got Matvey Michkov. In second, I got Macklin Celebrini, and in first, I got Lane Hudson.
Oh, dude,
Tell
I
me why
thought
I'm wrong, Mark.
I thought you were gonna do this, man.
You knew I was
I
going to
don't
do
really
this.
know if you're wrong. I just feel okay. So I'm actually a little bit different than yours. I don't have Michkov right now in mine. I've got Wolf at 3. I've got Hudson at 2 and Celebrini at 1. I just I hate to be like the whole Hudson thing, right? I mean, he's playing phenomenal recently. I mean, even his defensive game has picked up a bit. A lot of people were kind of like using that as like the scapegoat of him not being a great player and stuff like that. I feel like Celebrini's more well-rounded. I don't know if he has a quote unquote bigger role. I mean, like they're both kind of playing like top pairing, top line in each position. Celebrini, I mean, was out a little bit. He's kind of got a better points per game. I know it's harder as a defenseman. I think it's a lot tighter than it was like a month ago, though. Like, I feel like a month ago, I
It's
was like, Celebrini's winning this award. Like, I feel like like, what do you think the odds are right now? Like, I'd say Celebrini's favorited, but I'd say it's probably like plus 200. Like, there's no
Celebrini,
way it's like, I don't even know if he's like a negative, no, man, not plus 200, maybe like plus 150. I don't know. What I'm saying is, I don't think he's like a minus like 500 odds to win this award right now, which he may have been a month ago.
it's definitely close. Like, here's the reason I go with Lane Hudson, man, is the fact that can you name the defensemen in the entire NHL that have more points than Lane Hudson right now? It's a short list, so
I mean, a lot of them are more like like not veteran guys, but I mean, like guys that have been in the league for quite some time. Obviously, like how many? I don't even know how many is it. Like there's obviously McCarr, there's Hughes. I'm pretty sure that Hudson has more points than Bouchard, if I'm not
he does.
mistaken.
He does.
I know Werenski's having a sick year. I'm bringing it up here on my side. Actually, I'm kind of cheating it out. Morrissey could totally see that. Fuck, dude, ninth in the league. Like he's tied with Bouchard,
He's
tied with
tied
Hedman
seventh.
as well.
Yeah,
Hedman's
he's
got a
got
couple
more.
games in hand.
He's got more points than Rasmus Dahlin as well. Like, man, like we're talking about like a guy that could be a generational talent here in Hudson. Not that Celebrini isn't either, but like Celebrini, yeah, he's at a point per game right now, but he's also at a point per game playing 30 games. Honestly, like if it keeps on going how it is and Lane Hudson has 60 points through 82 games, 81 games, 80 games, like whatever the total amount of games he plays, but we know it's going to be above like 78 for sure, right?
Yeah.
If he has 60 points by the end of the season and Macklin Celebrini is at like 65, 70 points while playing 70 games, I think it's more impressive that Lane Hudson did that as a defenseman while playing the full season. Because the biggest thing is reliability, right? And Macklin Celebrini, he missed a bit of time, so he's not going to have that same fatigue maybe that Hudson's going to have. For me, that's why I kind of lean towards Hudson. Maybe that's
Okay.
completely terrible way to think about it, but for me, it's just like if the biggest thing with rookies is that a lot of rookies sort of hit that wall or start to struggle towards the end of the season because they haven't played that like professional length season, right? So
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
for Celebrini, if he's at a point per game but only played 60 games, I don't think that's as impressive as Lane Hudson putting up 60 points, potentially being top five in all defensemen scoring in the NHL while playing a full season, right?
I mean, I could get on the side of that argument as well. I think it's actually going to be pretty tight. I just wonder if Hudson's get like what you said though with Celebrini, like the fatigue thing. Like, will Hudson start to get fatigued as well,
Yeah,
right? Like, I mean, I don't really know. He's playing a ton, dude. Like, right? It's not like he's just playing every game. He's playing like 20 plus minutes every game. So we'll see how that kind of goes down the road. But I'm obviously super impressed with him so far, and definitely kind of excited for the future with him as well. Just can't imagine what he could be like in the next like 3 years or so as well. But I mean, is there anyone else that you'd kind of consider like being nominated for the Calder, or is it kind of like those four? Like you didn't have Wolf, I had Wolf, I didn't have Mitchkov, you had Mitchkov. I mean, I don't really know if there's anyone else. I don't think Stankoven's really had that rookie season we were expecting as
yeah.
well. He's playing with I think Ben and Duchesne a lot too. Um, the one other guy I kind of want to shout out, like just being a Habs fan, Emil Heineman's having a pretty nice year for the Habs. I think he's got 10
It
goals.
is.
I mean, he's nowhere near going to be contention for this award, but I mean, he was with you guys before? Did you know that?
No.
You guys traded to
Yeah, I
us?
think I think
So you
so.
guys got him from Florida in the Sam Bennett deal. You got a second round pick and a prospect. That prospect was Heineman. And then when you guys got to Foley from us, one of the
Yeah.
prospects you sent to us was Emil Heineman. So, I mean, he's a pretty nice player, works hard, kind of more like a middle of the lineup guy. But I mean, kind of just a little plug there for him having a pretty solid rookie season as well.
But yeah, the one guy that you mentioned that I didn't have, Dustin Wolf, I think he could finish third as a finalist, but I just think the way the media votes, like him being a goalie, and the fact too that he's a bit older than Mitchkov and Celebrini and Hudson, I just think that the media is more going to lean towards Mitchkov
But the
in
thing is,
third.
though, is like I feel like they also might look at it as like it's not like he's kind of taken over as a starter too, right? So I
Yeah.
think that's why he could potentially get it. I think the last goalie that was nominated for this award was in 2021, Alex Nedeljkovic, and he. I mean, it was definitely a worse class in 2021, but I mean, dude, he only played 23 games in but it was also a 56 game season. Played 23 games. He had a 923 save percentage with Carolina. So I mean, I don't know if you're comparing that. Like if Wolf ends up playing half the games, more than half the games, he puts up not even a 920. Honestly, I'd say even 910 to 915. He's looking pretty good as well.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's why I'm kind of like, okay, he's playing enough that I think that people are going to recognize him and give him a possible nomination for this award. It's not just like he's a backup playing 20 games, like just having a really good season, right? So
That's fair. While we're talking about the goalie, let's talk about the goalie award. It's the Vezina. Who do you have, Mark?
obviously, like I mean, I have one outright winner for this award. To be honest with you, it's Connor Hellebuck.
Yeah.
I think that he's been playing phenomenal. He's already matched his career high in shutouts in a season with 6 in 34 games. I think he just hit 500 games this year, 300 wins, 40 career shutouts. He's looking to get his third Vezina trophy, dude, which is actually fucking insane. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
when is the last time a goalie's won 3 Vezina trophies? Um, I'm curious to see how he's going to do in the playoffs this year. I have him winning this Vezina trophy. My two other guys that I have in the race for this, it's honestly tough. I feel like I wish I had four nominations. Number 2 for me is Logan Thompson. I think he's playing phenomenal right now. He's kind of taken over that starter's net after sharing it with Lindgren for a while. I think just him being like, you know what, like Vegas was great, but it's like I don't seem like I'm ever going to be the guy here. I think I can be the guy. I'd like to get out of here. And the fact that he just went to a team that had a lot of question marks. And also, like, Lindgren was great last year, right? Like, he's also putting himself in a situation where it's like he still needs to earn the net, regardless if he's in Vegas or not. And he's playing awesome. I think he's got like 4 losses all year, and 2 of them are in overtime or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, and my third guy this year, he's on not a good team, but I think he's playing phenomenal. Is Lucas Dostel. I think he's
Gustav
he's
Stell.
he's been fucking awesome, dude. If I had a fourth, I'd probably put Philip Gustafson in there. I think he's been really great as well, but I don't know if he's been as good as Dostel or Logan Thompson. So got Hellbuck winning it, Thompson and Dostel as the runners up.
So the three I'm going with, Connor Hellebuck at one. You got to give it to him. You don't even question that. Like he's leading the league in goals against, save percentage, and shutouts. Right? Like he's gonna win it for the third time without a doubt. That no questions even
Dude, so
asked.
also I saw a stat. Sorry to interrupt you, but like a goalie has never led like 4 or 5 different of those categories this late into a season since like 1986 or something.
Yeah,
Like
like
there's been
that's
goalies that have always been leading the categories, but not the same goalie leading like all 4 or 5 categories. Like it hasn't happened in like 30 or 40 years.
like honestly the way Connor Hellebuck's career is going. Like I think we're gonna get to the point that he may retire, and like there may be an actual debate for him being like a top three best goalie of all time.
Oh, I don't disagree, dude. I think he's in the conversation of like top 10 right now easily.
Yeah, and then for second, the one I'm gonna go with, Logan Thompson. I agree with you there, man. Like he's having a phenomenal season, and what a story for him going out of Vegas, wanting that opportunity, getting the opportunity in Washington, and fully taking the reins on it. And then for me, third is hard, man, because for third, you have some goalies here that are putting up really phenomenal numbers, but just don't have the games played, right? Like Stolarz in Toronto, he's had a really good season, but
The injury is gonna
the
hold him back.
injuries. Darcy Kemper, he's having a phenomenal season as well, man. Like he's a he's a 216 goals against and a 921 save percentage. Like he's had a really good season, but I just don't think he's played enough games to be the
I
fifth
also
finalist.
take in the factor with a team like that is like LA's a very defensive structured team, and a lot of goalies they've had recently have had good numbers because of
Yeah.
the defense they've had. Not taking anything away from Kemper, but I mean, I just don't really have him in contention for this award.
For me, honestly, dude, I think the third guy I gotta go with is Jacob Markstrom.
Okay.
He's a 911 save percentage and a 219 goals against this year.
And the thing with
Like,
him too, I think that's different, and I feel like a lot of people don't realize is he's going from a situation in Calgary where he's getting pepped with shots a lot. He's facing a lot of rubber, and as a goalie, like from experience, it's a lot easier to get into the game and stuff when you're facing rubber and not really like you're just kind of in the zone the whole time instead of the puck being at the other end. Well, to be honest, it's a lot different for him this year. Like I
yeah,
don't know if you saw the Devils had 7 or 8 straight games where they let up less than 20 shots on net. He probably has the most like high caliber saves this year out of anyone. I feel like he's been in Sportsnet for all these fucking crazy saves he's making to help save the game for the Devils. I don't really have a problem with you throwing him in there, dude. I feel like for me, he's probably in like my top 6 ish anyway. So I feel like that's a pretty solid guy to put in there. I feel like another guy that's probably on the outside looking in is Blackwood. I feel like he's
yeah.
been playing awesome in San Jose. He's came to Colorado. He's playing really good as well. So, I mean, you got to give him kudos for that award as well.
There's definitely a fair bit of goalies that you could nominate here for like coming in third or maybe even second's a bit hard just because of how good of a season Logan
It's kind
Thompson's
of
had.
weird
But
though, eh? Like scoring is down, but like goalies' numbers are not up. It's almost like there's like less shots on net this year compared to other
yeah,
years.
honestly, I definitely think that may be a factor is that we're not getting as many shots on that. Like the goals against average is pretty decent. Like you have 10 guys with a 250 goals against or better, right? Like
The thing is too is
that
if like I don't know how often you bet on like hockey and stuff, but like if you go on FanDuel, like there's a goalie section that you can predict basically saves and stuff like that. There's either like an over under or like kind of like an alternate save. You can select like, okay, Markstrom's making 25 plus saves tonight, right? The over
yeah.
under recently like has not been too high, man. Like I saw Saturday Montreal's playing Dallas. Like Montreal's been shooting a decent amount, 25 plus shots the last couple of games. Like over under was like 20 and a half for Ottinger. Like they hit it like 5 minutes into the third period. So it's like even they're noticing like there's just not as many shots on net, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
and even when there's still the odd goals, like goalie stats just look worse, right? You know what I mean? So
Yeah, even like I noticed this year with Vasilevsky and I'm like I have him in fantasy, dude. Like there's been a couple times where it's like I like check his stats for a win and it's like Tampa won 2-1 or something like that, but he has like a fucking like 890 save percentage. I'm like, wait. He won
yeah,
2-1 and he's an 890 save percentage? What the fuck is this,
yeah,
man?
that's crazy.
Let's move on though and talk about the Norris. This one, I think it's going to be pretty unanimous here. What we're going with.
You
What
think
do you
so,
have?
eh? Really?
Yeah. Who do you have?
I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, I'd probably take Makar, but I mean, like, I don't think Hughes is that far back, dude.
I don't think he's that far back either. I guess I'm more meant unanimous our top three.
Okay, yeah, I
I
got
think our top
Makar, Hughes, and
threes.
Werenski. Those are my three right now, and I got Makar winning it. But I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, I could be, you could sway me to vote for Hughes, what he's been doing.
See, I got McCarr winning it right now. I got Hughes at second. I think you could probably sway me to have him winning it. I got Werenski at third. He's having an amazing season. And I'll be
Yeah.
honest, dude, if he keeps it up and it's this close at the end of the season and Columbus does stay in a playoff spot, I think Zach Werenski might get my vote at that point.
Okay. Yeah, I'm impressed with him, man. I like I knew he was an elite player and he's been dealing with injuries and shit, but I wasn't convinced he could be this elite, to be quite honest with you.
This is what I feel like people have been waiting for Zach Werenski to do. To be honest, like for a couple of years, like we've been talking about Zach Werenski, like man, like he is such a skilled player, dude. And I feel like this is the first year where it's like he is what people were sort of thinking he may become at some point. You know, it's like
Yeah.
he's always been a good player, but he's always dealt with injuries or had some like been on a terrible Columbus team. Where now that Columbus is actually playing some pretty good hockey, Zach Werenski's healthy. Like you're seeing how good of a player this guy is, and like he's right now this season he's without a doubt a top three defenseman in this league, and you can't change my mind about that whatsoever.
No, yeah, I think I agree with you. Like the top three are kind of unanimous, and I think after that, like if you had to take one of those guys out, I'd probably be putting like Morrissey in there or like a Shea Theodore or something along those
Maybe a
lines
Wayne
as well.
Hudson.
Even I think even I think Hedman's even rejuvenated himself a bit. He's always been this offensive weapon. His defensive game kind of dipped the last couple of years. That's kind of improving a bit again. So I mean, those are more like your typical guys up there. Maybe not Werenski's typical, but I mean, he's always been a really great player in my mind. But he's just
Yeah.
kind of hitting that next level this season.
Let's move on and talk about the Rocket Richard winner. Who do you think's going to be winning that?
Ooh, dude.
We'll only go with the winner here. We don't really got to go
Yeah,
top
I
three.
mean, it's easy to pick the guy that's in front right now because he's six ahead. I think Leon will end up winning it, man. I think he's just got a sizable margin. I actually placed a bet before the season started that Reinhart was going to win it. It's not a terrible bet at this point. I mean, he's tied for second, but I don't know, man. I
Yeah.
think the way Leon's been buzzing lately, dude, I think that he's just in such a zone with scoring goals right now. I think that he'll end up getting it. Like it's not even like some guys at 29, he's at 31. Like he's played two less games than Scheifele, one less than Reinhardt. He's had six more goals than them. Like I think he'll end up taking this.
I think Leon's going to end up taking this too. And the thing I find craziest about that is that if Leon wins it, like when you think about Leon, dude, like a lot of people say he might be the best passer in the league,
I
right?
know.
And it's like if he wins the Rocket, man, like it's like well now he's the best goal scorer in the league because he has a fucking title, and like y'all have said he's the best passer for the last couple seasons, so it's like you're really
Yeah.
seeing how good a Leon is. Like I feel like Leon at points in his career has maybe not gotten the attention he deserves or the recognition just because he plays on a team with McDavid, right? It's like you sort of have McDavid and then you have Leon, where it's like, man, like Leon is a top three player in this league to be honest, like without a question. Like
Like like a
it's
like like a player,
oh yeah, I think
really.
I think maybe top four, but like I think the top four in the league is McDavid, Leon, McKinnon, Kucherov, and then it's everybody else.
I mean, I slightly disagree with you to be honest, but I don't know. Like, I mean, I'd probably have him top like 5 to 6, no doubt. I don't know. I just don't know if top three is a bit of a stretch. But I mean, if he ends up like winning this, like if he ends up leading the league in points or like winning a couple of awards this year, that might change my opinion a bit. I just feel like I don't know, man. I feel like I'd have McDavid, McKinnon. I love Kucherov, dude. I don't know.
I
I
kind of
just
forgot
I
about
I
Kucherov to
feel
be
like he
honest.
just makes everyone else so much better. Not that Draisaitl doesn't. And then it's like, I don't know, dude. Like, do you think Draisaitl's better than Makar?
Honestly, I think that one's sort of a toss up. It's kind of hard to because it's like defenseman and a forward, but I think more like if you're talking about like the best forwards in the league, I more think it's like
So you
you
think
have
he's
the
better than
top
Matthews for sure, though?
Draisaitl
Dry?
without a doubt, without like
I
I don't
feel like
think
that's
it's
like a toss up to me,
I
man.
don't see I don't think it's a question. Honestly, like Matthews hasn't proven throughout his career that he can stay healthy. Like yes,
Yeah, I
Matthews
don't disagree with that.
yes, Matthews has scored 69 goals once in his career, but Leon Draisaitl season in, season out is cracking 100 points.
He's got better playoff
He's up in
numbers.
120 points. He puts up historical playoff numbers. Like honestly, man, I literally think that when you talk about forwards in the NHL, you have the first tier of McDavid, Kucherov, McKinnon, Draisaitl, and then you sort of have that second tier where you have like Rantanen, Matthews, you have like Eichel, those kind of players, like the Matthew Kachucks,
Barkov, yeah.
Barkov.
I mean, I
But
could
yeah,
get on that. I just feel like maybe saying top three is a bit of a stretch, in
I
my
think
opinion, at least. But I mean,
yeah,
it's a valid argument.
I think top three maybe is a bit of a stretch to be honest. I
I just think what
completely forgot
Kucherov
about
has done like
Kucherov, but
year in, year out is like insane too, right?
yeah.
And it's like, yeah, he's playing with great players, but like he's the best of all of them, right? And he's making all of them even better than they are. So
Let's wrap it up and talk about who we have winning the Hart this year. Who are your three?
this is a tough one, dude, because it feels like guys get snubbed from this. Like Matthew scores 69 goals last year, doesn't even get a fucking nomination. Man, Okay. I'm gonna go one of the nominations, Draisaitl. I'm gonna go Kaprizov, and I'm gonna go Connor Hellebuyck.
You're gonna Connor Hellebuck.
Yeah, I am. I think he's deserved it enough, dude. I think if you're comparing, who's the last goalie nominated for the Hart? Carey Price. He
Carey
had a
Price.
933 save percentage in 60 starts in 2015. Well, Connor Hellebuyck's right there. He's putting up literally similar numbers. And I don't know, was Igor nominated for the Hart? That was another guy. I don't know if he
No,
was nominated that year. He won the Vezina unanimously. He probably could have been nominated for the Hart, to be honest with you. Look, there's other guys that I could put on this list. McKinnon's great. Obviously, Kucherov's having a fucking great year as well. I more look at Draisaitl's carrying a team. He's probably been better than McDavid this year, which is insane. Um, I look at Kaprizov, and I feel like for years he's been carrying a Minnesota team that he doesn't really have anyone close to his level on the team. Yeah, they have some great players, but like they don't have any other superstars, right?
yeah,
And I just think what Connor Hellebuyck's doing in Winnipeg is super impressive. And I think that goalies don't get enough credit sometimes for what they're doing, but I think that he's probably the most valuable player to his team. And I think he's been playing awesome. I think at the end of the day, that Draisaitl will probably end up winning it. And that's who I have winning it right now because I mean he's on pace for like 62 goals, like 120 points. I think that might be able to get it done, especially if he outscores McDavid. Yeah, I know McDavid missed a little bit of time, but still. So yeah, I got Draisaitl, Kaprizov, and Connor Hellebuyck with Draisaitl winning.
that's that. I like your top three, man. The one, the one I sort of have a bit of question marks with is Kirill Kaprizov. I think he's sort of there's been a bit of separation here between like
I think it's because
some of
he's
the
missed 9 games or so, though, right? But I mean, like if he ends
yeah.
up missing more time, it could be hard. But he is kind of rumored to be back soon, so that's what I'm kind of considering. Like if he still puts up like 100+ points after missing 10+ games, it's like holy shit, you know?
For me, I'm going with Leon winning it. I think I have Nate Dogg at two, and then third, man. Honestly, I love your Connor Hellebuck take, dude. Like, if I was a voter, I probably would vote for Connor Hellebuck third in the finalists. The only thing is, like, I think media just doesn't vote that way
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah.
It's
No,
like,
I don't disagree. I don't know if he's gonna get a nomination, but I think he deserves it.
especially when you have like a guy like Nikita Kucherov like having another monster season, right? It's like I think the way media is going to look at it is like, well, like goalies already have their own award, so because like I don't know, man. Like I don't think sort of getting off topic a bit here, but I don't think the Hart Trophy is like really what it is given out to really what it is anymore, to be honest.
Yeah, it just kind of seems like
Like,
it's more the MVP of the league decides besides being the MVP like to your team.
yeah, like now it's really just given out to whoever has the most amount of points, right?
Like I would argue that Kirill is the most valuable to his team compared to even all these other guys.
Yeah.
Like I don't even yeah, McKinnon's better and Kucherov's better, but like I mean, I still think Kirill's more valuable to his team right
Same thing
now.
with Hellebuck. Like hell, you take Hellebuck off the Jets, dude. I don't like. They may not be a playoff team. They like
Yeah, it depends what
they
type of
might
goaltending they really get, right?
they might be a bubble team, right? Or it's like you take Kucherov off Tampa. Like how much how much worse are they, right? Like
Yeah.
I like your top three, man. Honestly, like I would if I was a voter, I'd probably vote similar to that. But I just think that the way the way it's given out nowadays, I think it's going to be Leon winning it. I think Nate Dogg's going to come second, and I think it's going to be Krill or Kucherov third.
Okay.
But I'm with you, man. I think we got to start to. I think we got to get a vote so we can actually vote the proper way for this award. Because
Yeah,
right
and
now it's not
it's not
voted
like
that
every
way.
year I want like the Vezina Trophy winner to be a Hart finalist, but I feel like sometimes it's deserved, right? Like
Yeah.
Price deserved that year. Like I feel like Igor deserved a nomination that year, regardless if he got it or not. And I feel like Hellebuck deserves it this year, dude. Like putting up a 930 plus save percentage is no fucking joke, dude. Like it's a hard thing to do.
And is going to win the triple crown for goalies probably. with goals against, save percentage, and shutouts, right? So it's like
with the third Vezina trophy. Like, I mean, to be honest with you, I think that third Vezina might just make him a Hall of Famer right off the bat, even like with the lack of playoff success that he's really had.
I think he's already a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I honestly like I don't really know if I disagree.
Yeah.
Like he's been fucking phenomenal.
Overall, though, the awards, it's going to be interesting to see here what happens sort of with the second half of the season because so much could end up changing here, right? Like as we talked about, there's a lot of close teams here, so depending on who gets in, who doesn't, that could even sort of change some of these awards. But overall, today we talked about a fair bit. There's a fair bit going on right now in the NHL. Trade deadline's coming up. Next week, we're going to be talking about one player on each team that we think is a big trade bait target. So stay tuned for that. But overall, for this episode, thanks for tuning in, everybody.